Well, there's something to be said for being a jinx, and I'm fairly certain we get to qualify as one. Earlier in the offseason, we had done a victory lap that, wow, for the first time in as long as we can remember, the league was going to have zero turnover. Everyone was going to be back. Just exciting all around just to have that level of continuity in the league. Unfortunately, it was not to last. So we're going to start off by paying our respects to the Baltimore Ravens, in this league due to work and home life, having to sacrifice on his fantasy, and eventually this league became a casualty. So we have a new Ravens owner, but before we do the general, meet and greet and all that fun stuff, quick. Thanks so much for being a good owner to the old Ravens team. Thanks for making the AFC North such a terrible division to be in, and thanks for making it fun. Anyways, I've got Bill from the Broncos and RJ from the Eagles. Gents, any thoughts you want to share?
Ravens will be sadly missed.
Yeah, the new guy has a lot to live up to.
That is true.
Yeah,
but I am glad that it's not a retread owner. I am interested to see a new person come in.
No, definitely. So, nonetheless, though, as is tradition, we spend a couple minutes at any kind of franchise turnover, welcoming the new owner, if we know much about them, which we really don't right now. I think really all we know is that somehow he knows Jeremy.
Yes.
That's all I'm aware of.
But he's taken over the Baltimore Ravens, as everyone who's currently in the league know, has been one of the top teams and one of the most feared teams pre-playoffs to match up against. There's actually a discussion in, I think, the week 11 or 12 podcast that we did talking about, hey, does it make sense to lose a game if we could throw games in here? Which does make sense to lose a game to avoid playing them in the first round or really on track at all. But again, things didn't quite go his way. I think he was one and done in the postseason, and now is looking at next year with a couple of interesting pieces in terms of to hang on and hope that they perform like this again, or pivot, or as many owners will do, break it all down and build the team in your image. So we'll go through kind of what the state of the team is right now, and then we'll share some thoughts in terms of where they are to take it forward. So any overarching thoughts on the Ravens before I dive into the roster?
Like as a GM or as a team?
Team, GM, division, just general thoughts on the Ravens before we get into anything roster specific.
Good luck in that division.
Yep, I was going to say the same thing. Regardless of who's running it, that division is still a nightmare.
Well, let's focus on the nice things about the roster instead of the difficult situation that they find themselves in. Quarterbacks are Miami-based, obviously. Really benefited from Tua having a great start to the year and struggled due to some of the challenging finish. Fifth-year option's been exercised on Tua, which I think puts him around $20 million next year. If he's going to extend him, though, he needs to do it this offseason, or else need to go the franchise route, which is a tough thing to do considering how the season ended for the Dolphins. Nonetheless, he is one of the top-scoring QBs in our division, in our league, when he was performing, and letting in the bottle to really catch it forward with Skylar Thompson as his, I believe, handcuff. Skill position-wise, it's Isaiah Pacheco, the upside of Tyjae Spears, and Kenneth Gainwell. Receivers, you've got Tyreek Hill and DJ Moore carrying the load. The good news story is it was Rashid Shaheed, and an expensive but worthwhile contract considering some of the other things. And then the Ronnie Corpse of Hunter Renfrow, along with Ronnie Bell getting the special teams points from San Francisco. Fun dual-headed tight end monster. Nobody cares about kicker or defense or punter. And then just kind of an across-the-board good but not spectacular defense. Kind couple of players that really overperformed their point per dollar metric, and a couple where it was ever just I just need two of you guys to be good this weekend. With, for example, at linebacker, almost five guys in the hundreds, you had that. So reason why it was a really strong team, good position cap space, doesn't have any major free agents that they're losing. But draft capital wise, they've got a 24 fourth and a 25 fifth to start with here. So the draft cupboard is bare, but the roster is pretty well stacked. I know I probably just took all of the good talking points about the Ravens, but are there any that you guys want to sort of foot stomp or double click on here?
No, I think that he comes in to a very it's a very unique immediate decision that has to be made. Does he live with Tua or not? I think that's very interesting. And now he has to make that decision, and he doesn't know how contracts work. He doesn't know how extensions work. He doesn't know anything. Luckily, he joined early enough. He's got a month to figure all that out. But if he's true with what he said in the chat, that he doesn't trade and he doesn't really do much, maybe he is just going to stick it out with this guy. But I mean, generally, he still has a solid roster, but that's like the decision that has to be made pretty quickly.
Yep. Because he has to be extended before turnover, right?
Right.
Yeah. And the fun part is he doesn't have the cap space to extend him before rollover and take the cap hit. So he has to do some moves anyway. So it's a rough spot to come in.
Oh boy. Yeah, that is that's really difficult.
It's not a ton that he has to go find though. I think if he, again, let's say it's Cameron Curl or it's
he's going to have to move Shaheed or Tyreek to fit that contract.
No, I mean, so Tua's extension, so his let me see what his 5th-year option is. It's 5th-year contract declarations. Oh, it's in the spreadsheet. I'm looking in the wrong place here. League spreadsheets. 5th-year options. Tua said he had his declared, but I don't see it actually listed here.
Yeah.
Herbert's is at $30 million, but I think he was a Pro Bowler, so that may have impacted that.
No, Herbert was extended before Pro Bowl status. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and Burrow was at $30 million too. So wow, Tua might be up there in kind of the 28 to 30
35 range.
So I was thinking he just had to get to 20. If he's got to get all the way up to there, then that makes it a little bit tougher. So my initial thought with this roster was going to be wait and be patient, but there's some of this where it's going to be giddy up and either find the space or make it somebody else's problem.
Yep, learn on the fly. I hope you like Tua.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's going to be a crash course in value for him. Like Tua's valuable, but is he more valuable at $30 million coming off a career year with a bunch of question marks still, or is he just not going to get the value that he thinks he should have? And just like we all do, go through the learning process.
What quarterbacks are $30 million right now?
Burrow,
Mahomes, Jackson, Allen. I mean, he's not in that tier, so probably a little bit less valuable than the rest of them. But he's still more valuable than what, Kirk Cousins or
And that's
Daniel
why I'm
Jones.
confused here because it says 3rd-year option, which would 5th-year option, which means he's been declared. But again, I'm not seeing it in the spreadsheet. So
yeah, I think Jeremy might have just missed putting it on there.
Probably. But again, it's one of those that will be. Again, it'll be a tough decision to make. It definitely makes things a little bit more complicated with the team and keeping it together. Can you maintain production of Tyreek and pivot to a potentially cheaper or younger option? Or is it just kind of, hey, tough shit? You have to take a loss to move the contract or move him with the potential 1 or 2 years left of his playing career as he stated it. Or do you go, hey, I want to do this by piecemeal, and Cameron Jordan's going to be the guy I move. Maybe get a little bit less back for him, but not as crucial of a piece to move.
I wonder, like, obviously we don't know how this guy operates, right? But I wonder if just the concept of, like, not wanting to worry about the contract situation just pushes him to move him, just so he doesn't have to worry about it and can just sit back and learn.
He has to find a trade partner for that one.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think he could. I think if he has a contract or two here that he just wants to get rid of, he's got some probably close enough players to, maybe drop around off the pick compensation he gets. But if he did that with Carl, with Cam Jordan, with Rashid Shaheed, something like that, he could probably get off those contracts pretty easy just for the price of, a round of pick.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, say you think Shaheed's worth a second, offer him for a third.
Right.
But yeah, once he sorts that out, looks like Tua is really the only person he has to deal with making room for right now. And then the rest of his team have at least 1 year left on their contract. And with about, 12 million coming off and probably another 20 or 30 going on as part of the cap increase, he should still be in good position to fill out the rest of his roster. Granted, it's only about 8 slots right now. But again, who knows? We're still getting to know the new Ravens owner. Could be a big trader. We've heard rumors to the opposite. Maybe he's looking to join the league here of wild and craziness to turn over a new leaf or explore a new part of himself. But either way, we're glad he's here. And as usual, if you have questions, ask. It's a pretty supportive group that, again, won't try and rob you blind, but just to be safe, maybe it's good to ask at least 2 people. Yeah, welcome to the league, and you'll see why we have our own podcast, and we think it's pretty great here. Any closing thoughts on the Ravens?
No, I look forward to seeing what he's going to do.
It'll be a fun roster watch.
But addressing that to a situation is very time sensitive, so I'd say do that as soon as possible.
If you do listen to this, make sure you look at Pro Bowl and holdout rules, because Tyreek might actually factor into that somehow.
Also true. All right, so we're going to shift gears here. We are starting to enter draft season. All the college games have done. Everyone started watching tape. I think the deadline to declare has passed. So now we are starting to get geared up for the combine and all of the craziness that comes with fantasy draft season. So picks have been flying around all over the place. Mock drafts are starting to get posted now that we have more than, say, 10 teams that we know where they're going to be. And everyone who we know is going to be in is in. And now it's just all the machinations and thought experiments in the next 100 days before we find out where these guys are actually going to play. So Broncos, Eagles, and I have put together what we think our league top 10 is going to be. Giants, I don't know if you want to try and throw that together on the fly or just kind of comment on what we have. But we'll kind of go through those. Not a whole lot of differences, but we're talking about a couple players.
Yeah, I can kind of just use my big board.
Yep. And again, I think we're just looking at this agnostically. We're not necessarily looking at specific team needs right now, because I do expect things to move around in terms of picks, owners, and stuff of that standpoint for probably 60 to 80% of the top 10 between now and draft day. But we'll see what this ends up looking like. But right now, I think we've got a little bit of a disagreement for who would be the first overall pick. Shockingly, 2 Ohio State fans have thought it's the Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., RJ, Edgar the pragmatist, and the owner currently of the number 1 overall pick says it's Caleb. So, again, could be of a preview of what's to come, could be what his big board is saying. We'll start with Giants. Where are you breaking ties on the first overall right now?
if I was just like just a raw big board, I would go quarterback. I would not necessarily say it's Caleb. Um, I think fantasy potential wise, like assuming he's a top 10 pick, Jalen Daniels is probably going to be the more productive, like just raw fantasy guy. Um, so he would be kind of in my scope, depending on the weapons he gets. Um, so if I was to break a tie, I guess I'm just saying like quarterback at 101. But yeah, Marv is obvious. I mean, like landing spot, it could move him a couple of different spots. Just kind of depending on where he goes, because like they're hoping he's the next Justin Jefferson, in which case he probably should be 101. But if he's more of a Drake London, that's probably not where you want to take him.
I agree. I don't know. It's looking like Marv, but at this exact point, the correct pick would probably be Caleb. That's why I put him as the 101. Will that actually happen? Very unlikely. But we don't know the landing spots, and that'll be the big deciding factor. But for the sake of the conversation, I did put Caleb first. Right now, I do think he's the best quarterback. But we'll see once everybody gets to throw at their pro day or the combine, and everybody gets hyped up. We all like big throws, so that might change.
Yeah, I love watching them throw against air, but I agree Caleb is the best like prospect, but I think fantasy wise, like he might have the worst season of the three.
Probably. I mean, depending on where he goes. But I think we said that about Stroud last year.
Yeah, but we're also not looking at just one season.
Right. I think this year is a really good year to have an early pick, whether you go wide receiver or quarterback. There's a high likelihood you retain like that type of value for at least a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and again, we'll have the next 3 months to make these guys bulletproof, but there's definitely risk involved with all these guys still until we find out more, see what their measurables are, all of those things. But like RJ said, having an early pick this year looks like a pretty fun place to be with some of the talent and potential of what we're seeing in the class right now. Interesting, we all kind of go different directions with our second pick. So RJ kind of stays on book probably, going Caleb and then MA Marvin Harrison at second. Bill double taps receiver. I go Harrison 1 and then Jaden Daniels 2. So again, agreeing with what Giants is saying. If they go to equivalent situations from a pure fantasy perspective, Jaden's got the higher floor than Caleb, I'd say, based just off his rushing. I'm not saying Caleb's shabby at running the ball, but it's not really what he does first. So, I think that's the fun part about this. Call it top five. You can kind of order it in any five way, and you have a position to say you're right.
Yeah.
The Jaden Daniels, my only concern is weight right now. If he puts on weight, he's going to be fine. He'll definitely have the upside with his running preferences. But I just want to see him get large enough to play at the NFL level. Now, are we going to talk about Bill's pick? Because that's intriguing.
Malik Neighbors being 2. Well, I agree he's the wide receiver 2. Both receivers, again, over all of the quarterbacks. Explain yourself.
I didn't think that I was going to ever have a top pick like this, so I didn't look at anybody. I'm not a big proponent of Caleb Williams generally. I don't know why. I just feel like something's off with him. And I have Fields, so I don't really need a quarterback right now. No matter what anybody says about the Chicago situation, he's still going to start somewhere. So I don't know. I'm looking at my situation. I'm like, well, okay, Marvin and Neighbors are considered 1A, 1B to each other. So why not just go that route and see what kind of fun can be had?
Pure chaos.
It's
Yeah.
not too crazy.
I think, I mean, as someone who took Kenny Pickett at 103 when it was like a pretty stacked position, like offensive skill position draft, I think it's hard. And then like just seeing what Kenny's moved for a number of times, I think just raw value, you just kind of like have to take the quarterback versus, especially like Neighbors, who's like a bit more of like a deep threat, like kind of big play guy. Like he's not going to be like an X. I mean, he could be, I guess, because he's got the size, but uh, I think like raw value, a quarterback's got to be in consideration there.
I agree. I think any of the first 3 or 4 picks, depending on where Marvin goes, I think that just the long term value of those players should play a big role in like who goes where. Because all of these teams are, other than Bill, who somehow got the 102, they're all pretty bad teams that are probably quarterback needy. So they should consider addressing it, but they have plenty of other holes. So the best thing to retain value, because a great example, Kenny Pickett, who has retained value for what is this, the second year? Well over a first round pick in value. Like that's a good place to like sink your value to where like if your tank or your rebuild doesn't necessarily pan out the way you want, at least you still have assets that you can flip.
It's another one of those, like, it's also a window extender, right? Because like a rookie receiver is great for 4 years until they're super expensive, but a quarterback, especially at that point where like the quarterback cost is going down, like once he's in his second contract, they're gonna not only obviously play longer, but I think it's just like the value there will also be better long term.
Except for that horrible Justin Jefferson contract that should be illegal.
That is yes, a disgrace. Somehow the commish got him. I don't know. It seems pretty
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so kind of moving on, 3, 4, and 5. Not to rush any of this, but I think we all kind of have the same top 5, some combination of Caleb, Marvin Harrison, Drake Jaden, and Malik Neighbors. And again, all in different order. But yeah, I think there's a point to be made that all 5 come with some manner of risk here. Jaden and Malik, along with Brian Thomas, who I think we all have pretty highly regarded as another receiver in this class, all coming from the LSU offense. Is it one of those like in the past LSU where they were all actually that good? We're talking about like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson, or was one inflating the others somewhere in there? So I think there's a question there. Marvin Harrison Jr. Was dominant when he was out there. I think there's maybe some injury concern, maybe a little bit of just to translate concerns. But I think he's as close to a bulletproof receiver prospect as we get. And then all three quarterbacks, like you guys said, like something about Caleb just seems off this year. Can't really put a finger on it, but otherwise he's the best quarterback prospect we've had in a very long time. Drake, again, just something about the fact that North Carolina wasn't great at football this year. And again, it could be the fact that Mac is starting to lose it or things of that standpoint. But if you've got a top flight quarterback and a top flight receiver on that offense in the ACC, I feel like better results should have transpired. And then Jaden Daniels, he's 160, 180 pounds. He's got to put on 30 pounds just before the combine and maintain his athleticism. So if he disappears into the gym for 6 months here, We'll see what happens. But the nice thing is, unlike I think the last couple of drafts, all three of these quarterbacks are likely to be falling in positions where they be day one starters, which changes some of the calculus in terms of drafting them.
Yeah, just one thing on May too. Like he's another guy with a higher floor because of his rushing. So it's kind of like another like safety pick, where even if he doesn't have the best landing spot, fantasy production wise, he might be the second or even the top performing QB just due to the rushing. I'm not biased at all as the guy with QB1 repeatedly because of his rushing, but QB matters.
Yep. So I think not necessarily the next two that we've discussed. That I think RJ doesn't have one of them in his top 10. Bill has both, just in a slightly different order than I do. So I'll go with the order I have because hey, it's mine. I like it. Rome Odunze and Blake and Bowers. Bowers as the next great tight end prospect that everyone's going to lose their minds over. And Odunze being a ridiculously good receiver prospect, maybe just shy of the Harrison and Neighbors category, which again I feel is kind of like the AJ Green, Julio Jones category. So being in that next tier below isn't something to shake a stick at, but again, I think for most people clearly the wide receiver 3 or in that realm of the conversation for it. So knowing how we do things here in our league, which are you guys going for first, the stud tight end or the third receiver off the board?
For me, it completely depends on who's picking. Like if I'm a team like mine where I traded into the top 10 and I was able to grab an elite asset, probably I'm going to want to go with whatever position is weakest. So for most teams, that's tight end. So I would probably say Bowers would be probably 6 or 7. But more often than not, like you're not going to take the tight end in the top 10. You're going to go with the guys that are more sustained and quicker to impress. The only thing I would say is I wouldn't take JJ McCarthy. I know I have him listed there, but I don't think McCarthy is a top 10 pick for real. When it all comes down to it, I don't think he's a top 10 pick in the league. In this league.
We'll get into the quarterback stuff in a second here. That was going to be my next topic. So just for now, let's keep it on Bowers and Odunze, or if there is a tight end or receiver you think should be above them in the wide receiver 3 or the tight end 1 conversation.
I would take Rome. Just tight end. Sam Laporta is an outlier, right? Historically, that position is really slow to develop. You're usually not 22 and being like tight end 1 or 2 or whatever the hell he was. So like, and if you just look at like the historic points from like a first round tight end, like it's pretty minimal. Like he'd have to have the dream landing spot, right? Okay, maybe like the Chargers at 5 take him. He's got Herbert tossing him the rock. For me to want to take him over Rome, who's a receiver that I really like. I do think that top 7 is likely the top 7 that we'll have in the draft in whatever order. Like that's, to me, those are like the top 7 players in the draft, unless someone just falls in the actual draft.
But I mean, even if he does go to the perfect landing spot, right? Like I still believe that your point is accurate. Of it Laporta is an outlier, and there's no. And I guess this is kind of where it comes down to like what I was saying of like, where's your team sit? Like, do you need a tight end like right now, or can you sit and like wait for next year potentially?
Yeah, even with Laporta being an outlier, he scored 230 points, so he would have been wide receiver 16 or 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's a benefit. It's kind of like catcher back in the day, that if you get power, or you get average, or you get some some other stats from the catcher position in baseball. It's worth it, although granted, it feels like tight end's getting to be a lot more flat next year, but that's a conversation for another pod. All right, to Bill's follow-up question that he led into, who is your quarterback for at this point? Most people, I think, are pretty well aligned on Caleb, Drake, and Jaden being the top three. Who is your QB for? RJ, we'll kick it off with you.
JJ McCarthy, but I could be swayed either way with him or Penix. I think they're both projects more than anything. But they're probably like late first projects in the real draft, which will allude to them getting some type of an opportunity in their first year. So they will be early picks in our draft, I think.
Yeah, I would take McCarthy because of the rushing floor over Penix. And I just haven't liked what I saw from Penix this year either. But like that said, in the top 10, like I probably wouldn't consider either of these guys, even if they were first round picks in real life. Yeah, I'm not like a big believer in either of them. But yeah, I would take McCarthy in this scenario.
This is definitely going to change, but I mean, as it sits right now, I would say that Bo Nix is my 4.
Oh,
but I mean, it's going to change.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who the dark horse is going to be because right now it seems like Penix, Nix, and McCarthy are all right there. But I feel like there's someone that we just haven't either looked at or heard of that is going to come in and everyone's going to be like, oh my God, this guy from Utah State is, the real gem in this. Like, look at what he is.
I can tell you who that's going to be right now. It's going to be Spencer Rattler.
oh.
I guarantee it.
It's
guarantee it. He's going to go nuts at the combine. People are going to be like, oh, back in the first round.
There you go, guys. Now you know my 101.
God. So, if you're just going to light things on fire. Well, the thing though, I mean, and Spencer doesn't qualify for it is because people know who he is because of the QB1 stuff and because, Ohio State and all that, craziness of him transferring all over the place and kind of flaming out on a number of spots pretty, publicly with losing his job to Caleb Williams, things like that. So I'd say he's more of a known guy. I'm talking kind of like nobody knew who the hell Jordan Love was until he declared, and everyone's like, oh, look at this guy. He's got a really strong arm. Went to kind of a mid-major school. Or, again, they probably would have declared instead of transferring, but like if like Will Howard was declaring, someone like that, where it's like, okay, you were Big 12, not one of the top Big 12 teams, but hey, you've got some of the tools, so sure, we like you. That's kind of what I'm wondering here. I haven't found them yet, but I haven't found the full list of folks who have declared for the draft.
That's interesting. Michael Pratt.
Yeah, that's the number 7 on PFF right now.
Really?
Yeah.
That up there. I was trying to look at NFL prospects, and they're still listing on NFL.com last year's draft pool. So
Let's
see.
All right, so
Tankathon has, basically been those 6 as the only, big board that they've registered right now. And again, that's part of the fun, part of doing the research and figuring out who some of these guys are. But,
what about Joe Milton?
I haven't heard that guy yet. And there's always a guy like that, whether it's Zach Wilson or Jordan Love or whatever, that kind of comes up and says, oh, BYU's quarterback. Of course, this guy should go in the top 10.
I'm sorry. Is Jake Plummer's son coming out this year?
I don't think that's his son. I don't think they're related.
Okay.
He's related to a different quarterback.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, he's a huge dude though. 6'5", 215.
Maybe he is.
Yeah, he's a big boy. Sam Hartman from Notre Dame.
Hartman's a name that I'm surprised just really just disappeared this year. Like I think by week 5 or week 6, they're like, "Oh, look, he's doing it again. He played well with Wake Forest last year. Now he's playing well with Notre Dame. Look at this." And then that wasn't the case anymore.
Oh wow! Phil Jerkovic and Keaton Slovis are coming out this year.
Oh man, those are some names.
Yeah,
I think this is the year of the for the princes who were promised.
right. All former 101s.
Yeah, like these are the Debbie guys that you drooled over and said, Keaton Slovis. I've got the future USC quarterback, or Spencer Rattler. Oh, he was QB1 and he's going to be Ohio State's guy, or stuff like that. Like it just truly did not go your way on this one.
Yeah, I remember Slovis. He was, I had him high for a few years ago.
He killed it at Pitt last 2 seasons ago, and then he went to BYU, and they made the horrible mistake of letting Jerkovic come in.
Yeah, I'm just going to look at this. Like, Davis Brin, the senior out of Georgia Southern, was in the top 10 in passing yards in college game. He's going to come out of nowhere as 6'2" and be like the Brock Purdy or something like that. So I don't know. There's work to be done here. Defense, I think I'm the only one who had a defender in the top 10. Or did you put Jonathan Brooks there? He's running back. So am I the only person who put a defender top 10?
I think so.
I believe so.
Again, D tackle doesn't necessarily get the value in our league, so I could see, him Murphy not jumping up there. I'd say there's probably some debate as to who the top edge is, so I could see that diluting things. I kept Dallas Turner in my top 10. I think he's the best of them. He's the most versatile of them, and he's the safest of them. So I think he'll be the guy right now, but I feel like DE or edge kind of 1 through 5 could be pretty fluid between now and the draft.
They will definitely have value. Dallas is, I don't know. I would consider him like the Will Anderson of last year, kind of just do it all, or capable of doing everything. So I like the pick. Would I take him in the top 10? Probably not, but I don't hate the idea. There's always one that seems to find their way into the top 10.
Yeah, and landing spot's going to be key for these guys too. So hopefully the true position helps neutralize that a little bit. But I could definitely see a couple guys getting some favorable positional ratings based off of what Fantasy Sharks have done in the past. All right. Any other draft thoughts, insights, queries that people have as they're putting this together or want to talk about at this point?
I'm interested in both of your hate on the running back position this year.
I was actually just going to say that I don't think that we have a running back go in the top 15 in our draft this year.
Ooh.
I just don't know who it is yet. Someone's going to rise. Someone's going to end up in the top 10. I just don't know who that's going to be, whether it's Brooks, whether it's again, I feel like it's lesser known guys who are declaring, but are going to rise here. Like Roschon Johnson wasn't on anybody's radar really until we got a little bit closer to draft combine, saw his measurables, figured out what was going on with him being behind Bijan, and then he kind of grew into a mid-round running back prospect. I can see something like that happening again as people look at and say, oh, Kendre Miller, or hey, Roschon Johnson, or hey, Devon A-Chain, or A-Chan, folks like that where we just don't know the numbers yet. And once we see, holy shit, that guy's got 4.29 speed, yeah, I think he's worth the top 15 pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that someone will go, but I mean, as it sits right now, I don't see one that goes in the top 15. There's too many receivers and quarterbacks.
Man, I see 7 going in the first round. That's going to be interesting for us to.
That'll be wild. If no running backs go in the top 15, but 7 of the next, 17 picks are running backs. That would be.
It's going to be a lot of battling in those 20s.
Pretty gnarly, yeah. All right, let's talk about a couple of trades. So some of the madness wore off after the early part of the week. So I take back all the nice things I said about you guys. A couple of bigger moves, but I think a lot of the stuff is kind of still rounding out the edges and pricing some of the bigger moves out. So we had Giants getting out of the Rashad Penny contract for the price of Jordan Whitehead, who is an expiring contract and will need to be tagged. So the opportunity to tag a safety to eat the Penny contract, good on you, Steelers, for taking that, but that was too rich for my blood.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting one because Whitehead does still have value. I mean, I like that. I like what it took to pay off moving Penny.
I really thought you were going to get stuck with it.
Yeah, I mean, I was always going to cut him if I couldn't move him, but since the Whitehead market was pretty bare, like I wasn't going to get a third for him, so it was like maybe I'm just paying a fourth, or the rights to tag him to get off Penny, and I was fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was putting together an offer at least of something else to eat the Penny contract, but good work if you can get it. Next one is this classic goose. Milano doesn't have a timetable for his return or recovery right now. Obviously, he's got the offseason with Buffalo just losing, but a 29-year-old, probably middle linebacker who is still recovering from his injury, is a tough price to pay, and that's a top 45 pick, somewhere like the 212.
I think he's 14th.
214. So the 46th pick for Matt Milano. I think I'd probably want someone either a little bit younger or a little bit more established and safe for that pick. So I'd say it's a bit of an overpay by Jags, but Chiefs probably sent that out to 15 teams, and Jags is the first one that said yes.
Jags is desperate for actual linebackers. All his guys are going to become edges.
Yep.
Yeah, and with his team being theoretically capable of winning the division, this gives him, assuming he comes back healthy for the beginning of the year, this gives him I mean, Milano was really freaking good, and he's sub $3 million, right? So assuming he plays at least another year or two, I don't know what his in real life contract is, but that's a decent. I mean, what would a more fair value be? Maybe an end of the second round pick, so you're paying a half round premium for a piece that helps you now.
I think it's totally fine, honestly. This is super logical, especially if he comes back and plays.
I mean, I agree with Mike. I think it's a bit high for Milano, but not everything's going to work out perfect. So this is, an inside linebacker that I'd imagine Jags wanted, and that was a price that they agreed upon. It's a little high in my opinion, but it's fine for both of them.
Yeah, I'm looking through and on some teams that I know are pivoting and/or selling. I'm seeing probably 3 or 4 better options I would prefer over Milano. So it sounds like I may be on a bit of a minority on this one, and I think Giants makes a good point that if it's off, it's not off by much, and sometimes we can be too cute by half. So I'm all for that. Just again, outright, I would say the price seemed high to me. Speaking of high prices, Panthers and I making kind of the biggest probably draft capital or overall trade value deal. I pick up the 111 and Nolan Smith. Panthers gets Jalen Phillips, the 28 and 29 in this year. So I give 28 and 29 and move up, half a round. and he upgrades from the prospect of Nolan Smith to a top 15 performer in Jalen Phillips when he's on the field.
Genuine shock that this was not the 108 that he gave back.
Oh, I think it's a perfect trade.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not mad about it. I'm just surprised that it wasn't the 8.
I like this a lot more from Mike. I'm not Phillips coming off an Achilles. Like he's probably going to be a year out, right? And he tore it towards the end of the season. Like he's going to be a year away realistically from being productive. Nolan Smith at that point might be establishing himself, and is going to be, cheaper because Phillips is coming up on his 5th year. The 2 late first to move up to 11. I don't know. I really like this for the Vikings side.
Yeah, I like my side too. Granted, I'm pretty sure if he wants, there are a couple teams that would give a first for Jalen Phillips right now. I'm not sure if that's still the same sentiment for Nolan Smith. So, if nothing else, he can potentially convert that into 3 late firsts, and then it's a different looking trade, I think, at that point.
Fair.
All right. Moving on up, Chiefs and Chargers, Bud Dupree for a 5th and a 4th. What's Bud's contract? $6.7 million. All right, Goose is going to goose.
It's a goose player, I think.
Then,
I think Goose has owned him like on 3 separate occasions, at least.
Then Commanders losing Yasir Abdullah and Jay Ward, I think, in a taxi theft claim.
Yes.
And then, or taxi and waivers or whatever it was. And then Giants and Eagles making an interdivision trade. Next year's 3rd round pick from the Eagles for Jeremy Ruckert. Big fan of the guy when he came out, but he hasn't really made good on his opportunity in New York yet. Couldn't get on the field at all last year and had like 22 targets this year. So could be a year 3 breakout on the cheap. If not, nice to kind of get the 3rd round draft capital back for him. I think he was drafted at.
He was a late 2nd, actually. Right.
I probably took him. So.
Yeah, who's the one in front of him? Oh boy, Chiefs. Tyler Conklin. If I'm not mistaken, his contract's up.
I like Ruckert. Like even now, like I think it'll be just fine. And if Rodgers really does come back and return to any kind of remote form, he knows how to use tight ends.
Yep. If people can't tell, I'm accumulating tight ends right now, so send me your tight ends.
Yep. All right. Any closing thoughts on either the Ravens or the top 10 picks or trades or anything of that fun regard?
No, I mean, I'm not surprised that it's a little bit quieter, but I'd like to see everybody move some stuff around. Make sure your trade bait's updated. Got some people that haven't touched it since October on here.
I think we have some that actually go into last year, like last offseason.
Oh no, that's not good. Yeah. If you want to move some stuff, update your trade bait. We're all actively looking to trade.
Shocking to hear that, yeah.
Trade season.
Well, it's fun times. All right. Well, speaking of trade season, we'll start ginning up a few other offers here, I'm sure, in the after hours. But until next week, again, welcome to New Ravens, farewell to old Ravens, and as said in the famous video, fuck you, Baltimore.